Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to get right into it here. Plenty to get to, and I'm going to start with this. I received a couple of comments on Rumble, and first of all, my apologies for not reading and responding to the comments on Rumble. I don't get a bunch of them on there, but I bounced back a few episodes and I saw some comments, and I want to read them here and then and address them. They're very well done, and this was written by a Tory_Detroit. So thank you for the comments here. The first one, which I'll read very quickly, which has to do with a topic on, again, charitable organizations and where that money really goes and how that's a giant con also. But they wrote a comment about this from their own personal perspective, and I agree with it 100%. This is exactly what I'm talking about, and this is their firsthand take of what actually goes on. They said the following. They said, quote, "Also, I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but my grandparents are from the Ukraine. They said my parents were born in the United States. When I was a kid, my mom and her sisters used to buy stuff for care packages, quote unquote, to send to our Ukraine relatives. Clothing, reading glasses, toys for the kids, cookware, hygiene products, etc. They said our Ukraine relatives didn't speak English, and at the time, there was no simple way to translate, so letters would be written back and forth and translated through my grandparents. They said, well, one day, my mom sent a letter asking how the kids liked the toys. The reply said, toys? Question mark, quote unquote, which led to a lengthy back and forth letter sending, letter translating, letter replying, which uncovered that almost nothing was being sent from the United States ever arrived to our relatives. All of these years, our relatives believed my family was sending a Ziploc with one pair of glasses and a toothbrush or whatever. It turns out customs was stealing 99% of it and passing along only enough to mark it as delivered, quote unquote. When the internet became mainstream, I began researching this, and it turns out that most likely all of the care packages were sold off, essentially black market style. You need toothpaste? I got 30 tubes. Take all, $5 cash. My point is, the odds are at best 1% of these donations will ever make it to the people, unquote. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I addressed in a previous episode. This is my point. Anybody who's sending money, again, these K-12 schools, peddling these kids to do this for them, regardless of the quote-unquote political cause, it does not matter. If it's taking place for an organization, in particular, it could be, of course, in this country too, it's probably not going to see the real people it needs to see, but if it's occurring with any of these companies and these corporations, charitable organizations, in particular, again, for someone in a foreign country, good luck having it actually get there. Because again, according to this individual, their own family members weren't getting it. They weren't even using an intermediary as a company, basically. They're just simply sending something to them. It's all a con job. That's the whole point. And again, like I covered in that previous episode, they're using grade school children to peddle these political causes and, oh, we're raising money for Ukraine and we're going to send them books and blah, blah, blah. No. That's not what's happening. They're being used. Their minds are being used. They're patting themselves on the back thinking they're doing a good thing. And all of those goods and all of those services and all that money's just disappearing. It's just disappearing. It's going right into the hands of the actual child traffickers themselves, the drug dealers, the bioweapons organizations, the black market, everything. 100%. So, excellent story. Thank you for the comment. I appreciate it. They also said this, and it's an interesting question, and I'm not sure it's something that I've specifically addressed, but there is a strategy here if one were interested in doing it. They said the following, quote, Dr. Brooks, do you mind sharing some advice for those of us who want to go in front of our city council or even school board? Most of us have never done it. Don't really know what to expect, and some pointers would be fantastic. Okay. I'm gonna freelance this one, just stream of consciousness. Basically, there are a number of things that you can do. First of all, you have to go in with nothing to lose. This always helps. You have to go in understanding that you're looking face to face, basically, at the enemy. They don't care what you think. It's going to go in one of their ears, out the other. You're just one person. You have to understand the mind of your enemy first of all. That's that's a very important point. It's Sun Tzu for the most part, which means you have to have a different agenda. You're not really there to change their mind. What you're really there to do ultimately is to tell them something that they haven't heard, but at the same time be able to understand the spectrum of where the Overton window currently is and where everybody is looking during that particular time, and then throw the Overton window to another section so people can look through it and actually see what's really going on regarding, again, something that's not being brought up. Now, you've heard me say this here on this show with regularity. There are numerous things that are not being said within these school board meetings and city council meetings. Endless things. But for the sake of argument, let me use this as an example and as a bit of a template of what you could do and what you could say within one of those meetings. We know that the bioweapon shots are killing people. We know that both of those government elected official bureaucracies of city councils and school boards are the ones that have pushed the masks, the jabs, child abuse, and the entire thing. You could set up a speech and go in knowing the allotted time that you have to speak, and you can easily look that up by looking up the particular meeting and the meeting rules, either by watching a meeting on YouTube or looking it up on their own website, and they will have a section that will say something like public comments. You may have to sign in, so you sign in, but you'll at least know the time in which you have to speak, basically. And then you start writing out a speech. So let me use again the bioweapon agenda as being an example here. What is it that they have done in the past, and what are they not being held accountable for? They misinterpreted the word mandate legally. They basically coerced everybody into believing that the word mandate meant mandatory, which it doesn't. You could hit them over the head with facts about the mask wearing and how it was depriving people of oxygen, and oxygen deprivation is the number one cause of cancer. So theoretically, they were encouraging individuals to become sick by depriving them of oxygen, including, again, the abundance of cancer or increasing the likelihood of cancer. All of these things, I could go on for days and days about it, and I do on this show with regularity, but that's a place to start. I would say make sure that you have the time written down, again, as to how much time you have to speak. Have your speech prepared at home, again, with either bullet points or very short paragraphs, equally spaced apart so that you can basically memorize your speech. I really don't recommend walking up to a city council or a school board with a handwritten speech or something on your phone, and all you're doing is reading off of a thing. If you're competent about the subject that you're speaking of, then you can just talk about it. You don't have to have anything written down. So, again, doing the research on whatever it is that you want to talk about, I would recommend doing that, of course, and then it will become second nature to you because you'll have it organized in a timely speech that fits the time that's allotted. And then you can just hit them over the head with it. And they'll be astounded because you're making eye contact with them. You're not looking down at something, you're not reading something. So I would say that's definitely one strategy. Dress professionally. That's another one. Don't look sloppy. Don't look like somebody who just got done cutting their grass. We're doing landscaping and you just strolled in, and now you're gonna lecture them on morals and values in their criminal action. I wouldn't do that. I would dress as professionally as you possibly can. You want to look like a pro. You want to look better than them. And then when you're done doing that, The next step, of course, is the social media aspect, which is you make sure that it's being recorded, that someone's recording it, or that they themselves, as a city council or school board, are recording it. And then you find that clip on YouTube, because they're typically on YouTube, because these dummies put their false information out for everybody to see it and criticize it. And again, it astounds me the number of people that don't watch these meetings and don't actually see what the enemy is doing and what they have planned and the language that they use and their agenda and all of it. But find the clip, download it, and then put it on your own social media. You can add things to it, words to it. Make sure you have a description with the video that is concise, that you identify yourself if you're not, not afraid to be identified, and then put it out there on social media, have it make the rounds and see what happens. It'll always make the rounds on social media if you're saying something that speaks to more people than it does less people. Which, like I've said, I've thrown out numerous things here. You can speak about all of the abuses that have taken place. You can even take a sociological strategy and you can ask for an apology. You can say, I want an apology for the lie that you all perpetuated over the last 3 years. I want an apology. But then, of course, you'd have to trump that by saying, I know you're not going to give one, but I'm going to keep asking you for one. So you're asking them a rhetorical question. You know you're not going to get an apology. They'll never apologize for what they've done. They'll never admit wrongdoing. These are arguably, again, the most brainwashed people that exist. The people that take school board positions and the people that take city council positions, they've lost their minds. And I have numerous examples, by the way, later in this episode of those kinds of people. The people that think that we can reform government. The people that think that we can reform these institutions. We cannot. They cannot be reformed. They have to be abolished. So that's a strategy. You can do that. You can go with the approach of homeschooling if you're going to speak to a school board meeting. You can go to again, how many it's a perfect Overton window example. How many school board meetings have you heard where the person walking up to the lectern spins the microphone on themselves and they simply say, I'm advocating for anybody listening to my voice to homeschool all of their children and homeschool their families now and leave the American K-12 system. Leave it permanently. Make all of these institutions bankrupt. And you can do it in the blink of an eye. Do not come back to these institutions. We haven't heard people say this. This is another one of those things that would go quote unquote viral. But I mean, that right there is another strategy. That's another example. I don't recommend, this is a bit out there as an example, but it's true. I don't recommend having props. I don't recommend being one of these gimmicky people that goes out there and dresses up and, to try to make a point. Don't do that. Don't dress like a cat to try to make a point about, identity or, gender identity and all this other bullshit. Don't do any of that. It's gimmicky. It's been played out and it's cringe. I'll just put it that way. It's just very cringy at this point. Let the truth in your words and your knowledge on a subject speak louder than anything else. Another topic of discussion you could bring up if you were interested. City councils, like I said earlier, and school boards are responsible now for the deaths of endless people because they were encouraging these bioweapon shots. Bring that up to them. Bring that up to them. Ask, put them in the spotlight, basically, in a very personal light. A very personal light. Look at them, and of course, they won't respond back to you because that's in their rules and regulations, that they don't have a conversation, but it won't matter. You're being rhetorical with them, but you're making everybody in the room uncomfortable, which is the point. So you look at them and you would say, how many of you have been sick since receiving those shots? In fact, I'll take it a step further, and you say this to them, you'd say, how many of you received the COVID shots? By a show of hands. Now they won't raise their hands, but you know that they're injected. Again, you're asking a rhetorical question. You know the answer. You know that the vast majority of them are injected with at least 2, probably 3 jabs. Ask them how they're feeling. How often have you been sick? And then if I was you, even if you're lying, raise your hand and say, I haven't been sick in the last decade. And me personally, I mean, I really haven't. I had diverticulitis once, but that's about it. But I mean, you would simply raise your hand and say, I'm not injected with anything and I haven't been sick in the last decade. But you've been sick more often than me within just the last probably year or two. And you're injected with how many again? And you think that these shots aren't permanently damaging your DNA? This is what you were advocating for. And you just hit them with it. You just keep hitting them with it. These are the speeches that are not being given. They're not. We are not seeing this yet. And as you've heard me say on this show, the other one that we're not hearing are parents of dead K-12 school children showing up to these meetings and saying to the school board members or even city council members, you are encouraging everyone to take these shots, coercing them with money, bribes, gift cards, the whole thing, ostracizing people who didn't take the shots. You wanted people to prove to you that they had taken the shots. Well, my child or my family member who works here in this district, for example, took those shots and now they are deathly ill. And then you place it on them. Now, there are lots of people to blame. Ultimately, the individual is the person to blame, the self, but you would be putting it on them because this is something that they don't want any responsibility for, rather, because they don't think it's happening. That's how deep down the matrix they are and how surrounded with the matrix they are. They have no idea that it is they themselves who have advocated for depopulation among their fellow Americans in their own country with regularity, and they did it on such a coercive level that there's no coming back from it, and there's no way that if they ever accepted any responsibility for it or woke up to it, that they would accept responsibility for it, because they wouldn't. They just wouldn't. They'd kill themselves, actually, before they would ever say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, we shouldn't have said that. It wasn't our role. It wasn't our responsibility. We were wrong. We made a mistake. These are things you'll never hear them say. They'll throw themselves off of a bridge before they ever apologize to someone that they have permanently maimed or killed as a result of encouraging those shots. So that's my 2 cents on it. Dress professionally, know how much time you have. I don't recommend cursing, because depending on the meeting, they can probably end your comments immediately and say you're cursing, or they'll even interrupt you and not give you your time back and say you're cursing, you're not allowed to do that, blah, blah, blah. Just get to the point. Be direct, get to the point. I recommend leaving after the meeting. Don't stick around to see anybody else's response or what the person said after you. You can catch up on YouTube by going back and watching the meeting at a later time. I just recommend saying what you need to say, have a strategy for afterwards, and then leave the meeting. Yeah, that's basically my 2 cents on that. Pay attention, like I said in the last episode, to what these people are talking about and what they are not talking about. Because ultimately, with whatever message you say in a school board meeting, it has to be criticism. It has to be factually accurate what you're saying. Certainly, by and large, you can embellish a little bit, I guess, if you want, for the purposes of of telling a story. But keep it as factually accurate as possible, and then make sure that you're basically reaching down into the matrix with your words, grabbing them by by the neck or the lapels or whatever, and you're yanking them up into the real world to expose them, and then you're dropping them. Because when you drop them, they're going to fall right back into the matrix and act as if you weren't even there. Now, we know that this is a liberal tactic, but this is something that anybody who's brainwashed does. It's not just the left, so to speak. It's the right, too. They all do it. And again, I have numerous examples that I'll bring up a little bit later. These kinds of people. When you're done saying what you're saying, in particular with a school board or even, again, a city council, because they'll all do it, they'll come after you after the fact, and they'll say something like, "We disagree with the comments. We have no evidence of what they said is factually accurate," and blah, 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 blah. The whole smear campaign will exist after the fact, which is why if you're going to do it, like I did, have nothing to lose. You're there to tell the truth. You're there to stop something. You're there to halt something. You're there to remind them of what they've forgotten, because they are always overstepping their bounds regarding their actual job description. I mean, let's face it, everybody thinks they're a medical doctor now. Everybody. Doesn't matter who they are. Even I pretend to be one on this show from time to time, but I'm giving you sound advice, which is pretty basic. Stay away from poison. I don't have to be a medical doctor to say that, right? I don't have to be a medical doctor to point you in the direction of natural, over-the-counter supplements and exercising and eating right and things of that nature. But what you're doing is again, you're just reminding them of what they have lost and what they've completely forgotten or never even thought to pay attention to. And like I said, you're pulling them out of the matrix, you're letting them have it, and then you're dropping them back in. And maybe, it's not likely, but maybe, when they fall back into the matrix, they won't fall as deep as they previously were when you grabbed them. They'll fall, and they'll be in the matrix still, but they'll be at a higher level, perhaps. Because what will happen is people will hear your comments, and depending on the relevance of your comments and what it is you're saying, and how much that Overton window got completely thrown down the spectrum to expose a whole lot more, or at least lead people in that particular direction. Numerous people are going to be forced to comment on it. They're not going to have a choice because it's something that they haven't thought about. Which again, if you can recognize patterns and you can recognize verbal tics and societal conversational patterns of what's taking place right now, the conversations that are taking place are all over the place. They're all over the place on a variety of different subjects at a variety of different levels. It's chaotic. It's just frankly chaotic. So what you're doing is you're taking that chaos and you're all putting it into just one bullet, and you're firing that bullet on a very specific topic that the chaos isn't talking about, basically. So I've given you some examples and strategies there. If you're interested, again, in reaching out to me more specifically, you can email me, of course, AmericanEducationFM@protonmail.com. I'd be happy to send you a longer email or whatever, but I knew that I wanted to bring this up on the show as best I could, and there are endless other strategies too. I fully understand that, but it really has to come from inside of you. You have to be able to see the patterns of conversation taking place and then ask yourself, what are they not bringing up? What is of vital importance here? What is a matter of life and death that they are not bringing up? And I've just told you, and I say it on the show constantly. Depopulation. This is a word that people are not saying. They are not talking about 5G towers. They're not talking about the bioweapon with the regularity that needs to be said. Again, among all of the cuck-servative show hosts that exist, all of them, even the Steve Bannons. He'll have on a guest, probably on his show, like a Naomi Wolf, and she's like, I just can't believe this. Well, Naomi Wolf isn't an expert, and you're not going to hear depopulation come out of her mouth. That's a problem. Once people realize that there are endless people on Earth who want all of us dead, including the very people who are advocating for those plans, who have no idea what they're advocating for, when those individuals start to figure out that they're the victims too, and again, many of them already do. There are lots of these people. I've read numerous posts and numerous stories and continue to read them on a day in and day out basis of people who are jabbed and they firmly regret it. People who are jabbed and dead, and before they died, They said, "This is the biggest mistake I've ever made in my entire life. I wouldn't have had cancer. I wouldn't have had this heart problem. I wouldn't have had those blood clots. I wouldn't have had this amputated or that amputated if I didn't take the shots. Huge mistake. I realize that. And now it's going to cause my death." There are people who do wake up as a result. It's late. It's a little late, but they're waking up nonetheless. But again, if you can remind the people in those positions that are pushing these agendas without knowing what they're really pushing, and they, of course, have been the victims of it because, like I said, you have to assume they're all jabbed. If you can remind them even for a moment, then it's worth it. Then it's worth it. I could go back to my school board meeting right now and shred them. I could destroy them. Now, what would that accomplish? Well, that's up to the listener. Would it throw the Overton window again in another direction that would wake people up and cause them to look through it and stop, bickering about this, that, or the other? Yeah, it probably would. I could do the same thing at a city council meeting. You got a lot of these city council meetings again calling out Jews, and they're calling out their Jewish city council members. And I've seen these videos again from out in California. Ryan Massano, or whatever the hell his name is, I forget. They're good videos, but he needs to be talking about depopulation also. He needs to be talking about how those city council members have advocated for the deaths of endless people who live there. And he probably has done that. I mean, take that into consideration too. And I'm going to stop rambling here because I have other things I want to get to. But if you take that into consideration, then all of those individuals have violated their oaths of office. They have perpetuated a weapon under the guise of being a health measure. So don't expect to change the mind of the enemy, just expect to expose them. And the best way to do that is, again, bring up something that no one else is talking about. Look at all the conservative hosts and look at what they're not talking about. And then that means that's the thing that you need to be talking about. So there you go. Again, my 2 cents that took 27 minutes. My apologies, but it was an excellent question, and it's something that I haven't gone into, with any specificity. But yeah, there you go. Okay, geopolitically here, couple of things, and then it basically leads right into the education stuff. And this is an interesting topic of discussion because I think it specifically stretches back into what I brought up in the last episode. The entire theme of pay attention to what people are saying and what they're not saying. What are they doing and what are they not doing? What are they bringing up and what are they not bringing up? This exposes these individuals. And there are numerous levels of deception that are taking place. And there's a specific individual I'm going to hone in here in just a few minutes, but I wanted to make this brief observation. I mentioned that Tucker Carlson conference, that family friendship leadership thing, where again all those alleged Republicans got on stage and people who are running for president and were talking with Tucker, and of course he crushed all of them and whatever else. And again, a lot of the words were misinterpreted too. Like what Mike Pence said, for example. This right here proves that when a person isn't really listening to what a person is saying, they'll misinterpret what they're saying and then just run with it, and it won't matter. Mike Pence wasn't really saying that it's not his concern. Big cities, crumbling, poverty, crime. He wasn't saying that wasn't his concern. He claimed that he was bringing up, I understand what he was saying, but he was basically saying, and I'm not making excuses for him, I think it's pretty obvious that this is what he was saying. He was saying that talking about Joe Biden and Ukraine and wasting our time talking about Joe Biden not doing his job is not his concern, and that's the problem. That we should be focusing more on America and American cities and crime and things of that nature. So I get what he was saying, but it doesn't matter, because when you have the masses who don't like you, and I don't like Mike Pence either, I mean, man's a pedophile, allegedly, but either way, that's what happens. They just run with whatever story they want, and they slant the words, or they'll end the conversation, and then it turns into endless memes, and everybody's off and running with it. Another observation though that I made is where was Chris Christie? Now, this is rather comical, I think, and I think it's 100% true. As as basically shallow as this is going to sound and superficial, but it's 100% true. Chris Christie wasn't there, not because he doesn't like Tucker Carlson or he thinks that he's above the rest of the crowd. He wasn't, he basically wasn't there because he thinks that he's better than these other lifers who have been in politics forever, just like himself. That's not it. Chris Christie wasn't there because he's fat. I mean, did you see the chair that Tucker and the individual running for president were sitting in? Chris Christie, he can't fit in that chair. That's embarrassing. And I mean that seriously. I mean, I'm not knocking, I'm sort of making fun of him, but not really. I'm basically saying he can't fit in the chair. So what does he do then? Chris Christie walks on stage. He's enormous, by the way, remarkably unhealthy. The man's uterus is the size of Texas. And he stands up there on stage and he looks comical. So if he's not sitting, then he looks like he's supposed to be sitting because, again, there's a stool there. But if he's not sitting, he looks foolish because he's the only one standing. It was like when Tim Scott started to answer Tucker's questions and he stood up. I mean, basic social, unwritten rules of social, whatever you want to call them, social norms, I guess, or conversational norms. If there's a small table dividing two particular stools, which are, chairs on stools, basically, they're elevated chairs, and you stand up from that chair, you're going to be closer from a proximity standpoint. You're just going to be closer to the person who's asking you questions. So when Tim Scott stood up, he was standing uncomfortably close to Tucker Carlson because he's further away from everyone else in the audience, but he's closer to Tucker. It was weird. It's like if there's a chair there, you sit in it. But Chris Christie can't do that physically. I mean, he just can't. The next time you see Chris Christie, he will not be exposed below the waist. He's always sitting at a table or he's sitting at a giant desk where he can hide himself because he's grotesque. Again, I'm not even making fun of the guy. I'm just bringing up some rather obvious visual points here. The guy's grotesque, and it's pretty obvious that he knows that, and he's trying to do whatever he can to wiggle his way out of particular social events because he doesn't like the way that he looks. And he knows that everybody comments on the way that he looks. I mean, he's aware of this, is my point. This is not somebody who's actually going to be the president of the United States. That goes without saying. He's doing it because he's blackmailed. All of these people are doing this because they are blackmailed and they feel like they are going to either evade prosecution for something that they've done in the past that they are blackmailed for, or they know that they've been caught. And maybe they have been caught, as I said previously, and in the last episode, and they're being led around by white hats to just elevate Donald Trump and make Donald Trump look better in numerous situations, regardless of the topic. So, Donald Trump's not a thin guy, but he doesn't have a problem sitting on a stool, and he doesn't have a problem sitting in an elevated chair, regardless of how small. And he doesn't have a problem standing at a lectern and debating anybody. He doesn't care, because that right there is really the mark of a leader. Is you're not concerned with the social order of things. You have points you need to make because you know the truth and you're just getting after it and you're doing it. Chris Christie's not one of these people. So I don't know. That was just an odd thing I saw, and of course all the excuses that he made and whatever. So again, actions speak louder than words, and well, he's been exposed for a very long time. So there's that. Okay. Here's the next thing. And now I'm just into education-related stuff. I've brought this individual's name up numerous times before, and I'm going to preface it by saying that I have very strong opinions of this individual. I'm not a fan of theirs. I want to make that abundantly clear. This is going to sound biased, but it's not, because I don't think I'm being unfair. I'm just being as objective as I can based on where this person comes from, their previous words, their actions, and then the very odd associations that they have. And then, of course, the constant question that you've heard me say, which is, where in the hell did this person come from? I'm speaking specifically of Chris Ruffo. Now, Chris Ruffo has a new book out, and he's making the rounds, as one would expect. Chris Ruffo's written a book. It's not new. I mean, it's new to him, apparently. And he's writing about this because this is a subject that he knows he can profit from, because he has a great deal of people who support him and back his play no matter what. And he's made the rounds across the nation giving endless speeches, and God knows why anybody invites him. Because from all I can tell is his only credential is having a Twitter account. Again, I'm criticizing him. I'm making that abundantly clear. People are going to say, you're jealous, Sean. I'm not jealous of him whatsoever. This individual is milking the system. He's clearly controlled. He's being used. He's fine with it. He loves it. He loves rubbing noses and licking boots and kissing ass. I am not one of those people, so no, I'm certainly not jealous of him. I've written way more books than he has. Good for me, good for him, whatever. He's sold endless books. Good for him. That's not the point. The point is that he's CON-INC. He's the Conservative Inc.'s poster boy. He's certainly that person right this second. And I want to read you a little bit about his background, but the book that he's written now is titled, again, it's not a new subject, America's Cultural Revolution: How the Radical Left Conquered Everything, by Christopher F. Ruffo. Okay. I haven't read the book. I don't have to. I wrote a book that was very similar to this called Purposeful Deception. It specifically had to do with Marxism within American K-12 education, where it's going, and how the only solution is to walk away, is to homeschool yourself and walk away. Here's one of the bigger rubs that I have with Chris Ruffo and endless people like him. And frankly, it's all of the organizations that support him. And there are many, and I'm going to mention a few here in a little bit. It's the people who use the word reform. That we need to reform the system. It needs to be reformed. And we need to take these institutions back. And we need to rediscover what these institutions could be if the right people are in the right positions, and blah, blah, blah. I completely disagree. 100%. I am an abolitionist. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. We have to abolish these institutions. And the fastest way to do it is not to reform them. It's not to run for school board and win, and I'll show them because we're taking our school boards back. I disagree. I'm on a completely different plane of thought when it comes to what's really going on. I'm talking about life and death on the show a lot, existential things. There's no fixing this. There's no fixing it. Every now and again, you've got to just quit, throw it away, and then understand that if you attempt to bring it back, you're still going to bring it back with the same foundation that it had previously, which is what led us to where we are now, which means the people like Chris Ruffo, who are profiting from repeating the same old jargon all over again, while not really saying what needs to be said, and I'll mention that too in a second, but they'll repeat themselves constantly because they know that it's profitable within the CON-INC establishment. If anybody who's propped up by CON-INC makes a documentary or writes a book, it becomes the flavor of the month. I find it disgusting. Chris Ruffo is the Matt Walsh of the transgender discussion and talk. If you didn't know that was happening, you live under a rock. If you don't understand, and I'm going to take it a step further here because this is the step that always has to be taken, and it's the one that Chris Ruffo won't touch. If you don't understand that race replacement, race elimination, and satanic Jewry are the real problems here and always have been. And he doesn't say that in his book, and I'm venturing to guess that he doesn't. If he doesn't bring up those things, then he's not really addressing the real problem. If he's I was going to say assessing, it's not true. If he was saying the word reform, restructure, take back, revolutionize, and have a revolution with school boards in American K-12 and higher education, keeping in mind he's never been in those institutions nor taught within them professionally as an employee. If he's not saying, if he's saying those things, and he's not saying we have to abolish it because that's the fastest way to eliminate it, then that should tell you all you need to know about him. And it should tell you all you need to know about the organizations and foundations for which he works for. Because that's what they want. They want to take it back in a particular way so that they can continue to control it, so that when they choose to do so, they can throw it right down into the pits of hell again for future generations. You see, mentally, emotionally, physically, and socially, if Americans walk away from it permanently and never allow it to creep back in, then no future generation is going to have the problems that we're having now. It will cease to exist. That's where we have to go with this. That's why I'm an abolitionist on this subject. And anybody not saying that, I think, is giving them away. It's not because they're not agreeing with me. That's why I don't like them. It's because they're perpetuating these problems for future children and for future Americans and people around the world. Chris Ruffo's written a book. Congratulations. I don't care. He's not getting down to the real crux of the issue. He just isn't. So, Technofog, for example, wrote a Substack on his Substack page reviewing Chris Ruffo's book. This tells me all I need to know about Technofog. He's not getting down to the crux of the issue. He's very complimentary of Chris Ruffo's book. He says, he brings up Herbert Marcuse as, being a German-born philosopher, dubbed the father of the Marxist revolution and cultural revolution and all of that. I've been over this time and time again, that when Chris Ruffo talks about critical race theory, all right, critical race theory is a leaf on a tree that is a mile high that is satanic Jewish Bolshevism, with Marxism as being one of the branches. Or perhaps higher up the trunk, so to speak. It's certainly numerous branches, I'd say. But critical race theory, ladies and gentlemen, is a leaf on the tree. It's really just critical theory. And then, as I've said, you can pull that word race out and toss in any word you want. But that's why it's there. He's just honed in on critical race theory, like Matt Walsh has honed in on, I'm going to talk about people that want kids' genitals to be cut off and expose how crazy they are. Well, great. But that tune's been played now. We get it. It's been around long before Matt Walsh was around. It's been around long before Chris Ruffo's been around. But these guys hone in on this because they can make money off of it. They're leeches, is what I'm saying. And they're being taught this by their controllers, who are also leeches, because their controllers don't really want to abolish anything. They're not really interested in abolition, in getting rid of higher education and getting rid of K-12 education. They want to control it for themselves so that someday Chris Ruffo becomes the president of a university. Again, good for him. But he's still associated with the university. Maybe in the future. That's where I see him going if he doesn't continue to do the weird stuff that he's doing now. But either way, that continues to be my issue with him. I've brought this up too. I keep trying to find the audio clip. It's been scrubbed lots of places. If you have it or you can find it, please send it to me. But it's when Chris Ruffo was on Tim Pool's podcast. And he openly stated that he can't wait for the time in America where everybody is mixed race and where everybody looks the same. He said this. This is a thing that came out of Chris Ruffo's mouth. Now, where does Chris Ruffo come from? Because I think that this matters. Chris Ruffo, well, first of all, let me mention this very quickly. He mentioned again Herbert Marcuse, of course, was associated with the Frankfurt School. Herbert Marcuse is Jewish. He was married to 3 Jewish women. And it, of course, on Wikipedia says a German-American philosopher, because they always have to throw that in. And if they say, well, he's German, then everybody assumes that because he lived in Germany or was born there, born in Berlin, then he must be evil. That's absurd. Again, the man was Jewish, and he was a Marxist and a Bolshevik, and these were the tactics that he employed in everything that he espoused. This was who he was. But again, he was a chunk of bark on the much larger tree. Herbert Marcuse isn't the only bad guy, and I'm sure that, again, he references numerous individuals in his book, and good for him. But is he saying Jewish? Is he saying that these individuals were atheists? Is he saying that they were satanic? Is he saying that's what they're really trying to do, is destroy Jesus Christ in the name of Christ and all of the biblical scholars and the biblical knowledge that everybody knows? Is Chris Ruffo saying that in his book? I don't know. I don't know if he is or he isn't, but if he's not saying it, that gives him away. Again, the entire business of the multiple genders, okay, the critical race theory, which of course that's what it leads to. It leads to tricking people into believing that there are multiple genders. Is Chris Ruffo bringing up the Talmud in his book? Because we have to go back to where this really started. It started in the Talmud. It is satanic. There are 6 genders at least in the Talmud. That's where it began. It didn't start in the Frankfurt School. No. It started way before that. Way before that. In satanic scripture, which is what the Talmud is. Remember, in that book, Jesus Christ is, if memory serves, in hell in a pit of feces or something to that nature. That's what's in the Talmud. So this is where this critical race theory comes from. But again, critical race theory is a pinprick of a subject of a much larger issue that the likes of Chris Ruffo and Matt Walsh and these other individuals who are controlled, and we know who controls them, let's not kid ourselves there, but we know exactly why they aren't talking about it. Because they're not talking about it. They're profiting from the very people that they're criticizing. Because the people that they're criticizing are profiting from the same people. They're all getting played. Here's what it says on Chris Ruffo's Wikipedia. Christopher Ferguson Ruffo, born August 26, 1984, is an American conservative activist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Now, who started the Manhattan Institute? Lots of questions here. How does a 38-year-old guy work for the Manhattan Institute when he really has no credentials to speak of whatsoever? He made a documentary a number of years ago about poverty in America, for Christ's sake. That would be like me making a documentary about water being wet. I mean, oh, he's a filmmaker. He made a documentary about poverty. Good for him. It's obvious. I mean, who doesn't know that poverty exists? But here he is profiting from it again. Here's his education. Georgetown University. That's where he got his bachelor's. Not making that up. And then the Harvard Extension School for his master's that he got last year. It says he's best known for his activism against critical race theory, which he says, quote, has pervaded every aspect of the federal government. It's not critical race theory that's pervaded or is pervasive in every aspect of federal government. It's Satanism. It's the Talmud. It's Jewish control in the effort to wipe out Christianity, everybody who believes that, and then control people to get them to pretend to be Christians while tossing them copious amounts of money to just continue to perpetuate the problem and profit from talking about the problem. That's the real problem here. Depopulation. That's the issue. And then it says, and he poses which it says, poses an existential threat to the United States, quote unquote. Well, yeah, sure. But it's a leaf on the tree. It says he's a former documentary filmmaker and a former fellow at the Discovery Institute, the Claremont Institute, the Heritage Foundation, and the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. All of those institutions are controlled by the same kinds of people. How on earth did he get there? They plucked him. It was his turn. They plucked him. That simple. He plays by the game. He's married to a Filipino woman. I believe she's Filipino. Her name is Supatra Provincial, I don't know. Three mixed race kids. That's fine. That's his business. But the point is that he, again, on Timcast, openly stated that he looks forward to a time where everyone in America looks the same because they're all mixed race. I disagree with this. Where did that come from? Where did that ideology come from? Where did that belief in that? I mean, where did that come from, ladies and gentlemen? It came from the Talmud. That's where it came from. It says Ruffo opposes teachers discussing LGBTQ issues in schools. He's contended that public schools are often hunting grounds for sexual predators, quote unquote. And he said that to get to the universal school choice, you really need to operate from a premise of universal public school distrust. Well, yeah, good. He's right. But he's not an abolitionist. He's not. You know, Alex Newman, you'll hear him from the New American, you'll hear him say, homeschool your children. I mean, I've been saying this for a very long time. You can't fix these institutions. But that right there tells you the different wavelengths of where people are when they talk about education. Chris Ruffo's never been in the education business. Alex Newman's never been in the education business either. I have. I spent my entire life in it. And I'm saying you can't fix this. But that's not profitable. See what I mean? It isn't profitable. I don't have Alex Newman money. I don't have Chris Ruffo money. I never will. But if these guys are playing a particular kind of game at a particular level, Chris Ruffo is no different than Matt Walsh. He's playing the Matt Walsh Daily Wire, look at me, look at me. He's associated himself with Dennis Prager and Prager University, as they call themselves. That should give him away too, should it not? Guilt by association. PBS produced or co-produced his documentary on poverty. Who funds PBS? They tell you it's your taxpayer dollars. But who consistently promotes PBS and wants PBS to continue to exist? We know the answers to these questions. Again, who runs PBS? Are they Jewish? Probably. Do they agree with everything that PBS is pushing out these days? If they run PBS, yes, they do. Look what they're doing with Sesame Street, for God's sakes, and what they've been doing with Sesame Street for a very long time. Chris Ruffo had his documentary co-produced by them, which means they paid him. So he's taking Sesame Street cash. He's taking your tax dollars. The same group that, again, supports all of this. Again, the Manhattan Institute, don't get me started. Same thing with the Heritage Foundation. These are not good organizations. They're right in line with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Christopher Ruffo is a hack. I'm just going to flat out say it. I don't like the guy. It has nothing to do with jealousy or envy. Those are sins, and I want nothing to do with them. The fact is Christopher Ruffo is an opportunist, and he's a hack. He comes from two lawyer parents in California. Not that that's a bad thing, but he grew up in and was educated in a Jewish leftist environment, certainly within academia. And again, I don't want somebody. I mean, I really don't care. I don't care, but somebody hits me with the old anti-Semitic trope and all that other nonsense. They're missing the point. The point is, well, anti-Semitism doesn't exist. There's just objectivity. And again, if Chris Ruffo isn't bringing up the history of what I've mentioned in his book about the issues for which he claims to be an expert, and I hate that word, when somebody calls themselves an expert or they allow themselves to be introduced as an expert, which he does with regularity, that's a serious problem. Again, that exposes him, does it not? Guess who he's aligned with politically, beyond all those foundations and organizations and institutes? The state of Florida and Governor Ron DeSantis. He shills for DeSantis all of the time. He goes around the state of Florida giving speeches about CRT and being, DeSantis's legislative, I don't know what you would call him, concubine. I mean, he's his little boy toy, basically. And he goes around the country again. What Ron DeSantis has done is the greatest thing since sliced bread. He's made critical race theory illegal. Well, that's great. That's great. But who's going to go to jail for teaching critical race theory or any of these critical theories? And who's going to go to jail for teaching Satanism to children? Not a single person. No one's going to go to jail for it. You've heard me say that these individuals who teach this within schools, regardless of the law that shows up, will still teach it. They'll find a way. Because they're brainwashed, they're blind, they're indoctrinated, and they know nothing else. That's the way that it has to be. They don't know their actual subject matter. I mean, let's face it, most school teachers don't. They've been misled and lied to about their subject matter, which means what they're teaching is inaccurate. But when you throw in all of this satanic instruction, which stems from the Talmud, even the likes of Chris Ruffo have no idea what they're talking about. That's a completely different wavelength of thought. And this is something you're not going to hear these people talk about. So I could keep rambling about him. I could keep bringing up numerous examples. My point is that the man associates with endless people who continue to perpetuate the problem instead of abolishing the problem. Why? Because if you abolish the problem, there's no profit in it. This really allows me, too, to bring up Turning Point USA one more time because they're just another example. Charlie Kirk is again cut from the exact same cloth. Where did this person come from? Where did Charlie Kirk come from? And why all of a sudden does he have Turning Point USA? Or not all of a sudden, it's been years and years and years. But all of a sudden, this Turning Point USA shows up, he's on a stage, he's making these rounds with no credentials whatsoever. That doesn't happen by accident. That's coordinated. That's a very coordinated, real thing. The same people funding Turning Point USA are the same people funding the likes of Chris Ruffo. It's the same kinds of organizations. In fact, if Chris Ruffo basically had a NASCAR, okay, with all the advertisements and stickers on it, I mean, I've been over them already here in this episode, but there'd be the Heritage Foundation, PBS. I mean, endless stickers all over it, and on the back would be a picture of Charlie Kirk with his pants around his ankles. Because Turning Point USA, and again, the Heritage Foundation and all of those pseudo-conservative whatever organizations who claim to be at the forefront of funding and knowledge and blah, blah, blah. They're all the enemy. They're all the same people. They're all the same profiteers. They're all the same funders. They're all the same problem. That's the real issue. And someone has to ask themselves this question too. And there's an answer to this. And you know what it is probably before I even provide the answer, but What is the Heritage Foundation, the Manhattan Institute, the Hoover Institute for Thought and whatever, and the likes of Turning Point, what are they really doing? What is it that they're really doing? What is their real goal? Their goal is this, in my humble opinion. Their goal is to target youth, college age, high school, college in particular, youth, to turn them into conservatives so that in the future, there is your new Fox News audience. There is your new quote unquote controlled conservative base. So they think anyway. This is what they believe. I'm almost certain of it. The problem is that for them, they don't understand that there are many more individuals who don't attend all of their rallies and don't attend all of their speaking engagements and, let's set up a Q&A and have a leftist come up to the microphone so we can slaughter them and embarrass them in front of a crowd of people. They really don't have any idea, or they might, that there are way more conservative-minded individuals who are nationalists, who love this country and are abolitionists and want everything and all these institutions to cease to exist. I mean, if we really cared about our country, we would be able to do something which we don't see often, if ever. And that would involve an actual debate between individuals who are on the seeming right and have them go back and forth on what they deem to be important and watch the American people pick. Because if on one side you had, again, the entire group that is the cuck-servative movement that you've heard me bring up before, you know the faces, you know the organizations, they're all over there. And then you have another group of individuals who are not associated with them, who primarily exist on social media and the alternative platforms like BitChute and Rumble, and certainly BitChute, and Gab, for example. I mean, Chris Ruffo's not on Gab, okay? That gives him away a bit, but whatever. He can be on Twitter all he wants. The point is that they live over there on those mediums, and we live over here in the BitChute, Gab, Rumble areas. And we do just fine. And we know way more about real history and American history than those individuals do. In fact, you'll probably find more down-to-earth and real credentialed individuals with real life employment experience on our side of the argument. But it's very intentional as to why they never have any kind of a debate like that among individuals or between individuals like us. Because if we're all on one side and the Chris Ruffos and Matt Walshes of the world are on the other, we'll destroy them. We will destroy them. But see, that's the debate that doesn't happen. And that's not an accident, because they would never take that debate because they'll lose. And their handlers and their controllers would never allow it. They would never allow it. There's also this quote that I wanted to read, and oddly enough, it comes from William F. Buckley Jr., who is a Freemason. I mean, he was a filthy Freemason. He was controlled too, which is why he had the show Firing Line, if memory serves. And that's why he did what he did, because he played the conservative game, and he would be sort of the moderator between, a so-called conservative individual and then a hard leftist, and he would play both sides, but he was a conservative, so he said. Point is, I'm not saying I agree with the guy on everything, but the point is that he said this, and I put this out on Gab, and it was in one of the war videos too. He said, quote, "Leftists claim to want to give a hearing to others' views, but then are shocked and offended to discover that there are other views," unquote. That right there is the problem with the cuck-servative movement. That's the whole CON-INC problem right there. They don't want to debate people who are seemingly on their side about issues for which they speak about and profit from on a constant basis, because they will be had. They will be found out that they don't know as much as they thought. And again, on a stage with an audience, cameras, microphones, Q&A, the whole thing, they'd get slaughtered. They would get slaughtered. It was like when Milo Yiannopoulos showed up on Tim Pool's podcast and slaughtered his ass. He just slaughtered him. He made Tim Pool and everybody at that table look like they were talking about things that they know nothing about because they were talking about things they know nothing about. It was a perfect example. That's why Milo doesn't get a lot of invites lots of places. I fully get it. I'm not supporting Milo Yiannopoulos 100%. I mean, I'm just saying that's an example of what happens when you invite someone in to have a conversation about something for which they know a great deal about, and you quickly find out that you're in over your head. Con-INC would be in over their head if they had people like me, people like you, people like anybody who's bouncing around the internet with a really large voice. Patrick Martin, for example, on Gab. Lots of great posts, book author, strong American man. Abolitionist, if I had to take a guess as well. You put him on a stage again with these Con-INC guys, he'd slaughter them. That's a debate that won't happen because they don't want that infighting. Because because all of the Con-INC groups basically would lose control. They would lose their grip. So don't fall for it, I guess is my ultimate message. Don't fall for it. Know when your mind is being had and when you're being controlled and being pulled around by the Con-INC con job, because they do it with regularity and it happens all of the time. So there you go. Alrighty. Thanks for listening to that. I hope it made sense. Food for thought anyway, and there you go. There's a few other random education things I could bring up, but I'm just going to skip them. Again, one of them had to do with Massachusetts is axing its advanced math classes, citing equity, diversity, and inclusion. I mean, we get it. It's the same, it's the same kind of stuff, same kinds of stories time and time again. This is their plan. You've heard me say it. They're not going to take their foot off the pedal. They're going to keep doing this until the dumb, brainwashed parents just keep complying. They just keep complying instead of just pulling them out and making them all bankrupt in the blink of an eye. Let's see. Okay, jab-related things. I really just have kind of one general story here. But first of all, before I do that, in the last episode, I made a mistake when I was referencing a video. I said that it had to do with depopulation and the plan to hurt you and your children or whatever it was. That wasn't a video. That was just a title of apparently a much larger article. But the video that I was referencing had to do with the nanoparticles that are in these shots, the self-assembling metals that are in these shots. And that video, again, is the one that I had on Gab. So my apologies, but I misreferenced that. Either way, you can go over my Gab page and check that out if you're interested. There is this. And it's basically just some observations here. But first, I want to kick this off with a story from AJ. AJ texted me from California, our favorite California lawyer. Homeschooled his kids, by the way. And they're highly successful and super intelligent. Here's what he said. And this is interesting, and I like this. This is a nice social dynamic when it comes to the state of affairs that we're currently in. And then I have some observations of my own that I want to bring up and see if you are observing the same kinds of things. So here's what he said. He said the following, quote, he said, check this out. He said, I received an email from Samsung today, the company Samsung. He said, they are sending over a service tech on Thursday for repair of the freezer. The message is all about COVID and how it's, quote, having an increased impact on our communities, unquote. And, he said, get this, they have instructed their technicians to wear masks, use gloves, and wear shoe covers during all services. Our employees are instructed to minimize your possible exposure by not shaking hands, by keeping minimal distance of at least 3 feet from you and your family, quote unquote. It's absolutely incredible. The brainwashing is so thick. He said, I don't have a problem with shoe covers, but it's not necessary. He said, I'm not going to respond to the email. He said, when the guy shows up, if he's wearing a mask, I will tell him to take off his mask, then shake hands. I love it. I love it. I love, AJ, I just love how you force these people to do the thing that they've been told to not do while trying to wake them up at the exact same time and force them into a social situation that makes them actually uncomfortable when really it's the most natural thing to do. I mean, you're highlighting some serious issues here among people. He says if he refuses to shake hands or take his mask off, he's not coming inside. If I have to find an independent refrigerator expert online and pay out of pocket, I prefer that instead. He said this message above is from today, not April of 2020, though we knew it was a scam back then. He said, I wanted to share this story of something that happened today. He said you might be experiencing the same. He said the following, quote, I parked my car and walked towards CVS in Palo Alto this afternoon. This man unlocking his Tesla says hi to me. It's the father of the daughter who played soccer with my daughter for a few years. I say hi back and continue on my way. He walks towards me to shake hands and says, Hey AJ, it's Jason, our girls, ... And then he says, I know. I said to him that he knew who he was and shook his hand, and then he left. He said I could tell that he wanted to talk and catch up, but I wasn't interested, and not that I was in a hurry or anything. His daughter was standing by us, and I didn't even look at her. Haven't seen them since early 2020, right before the scamdemic. He's a white guy with an Oriental wife, and the daughter attends an elite all-girls school in town. He said he's probably one of the better ones around here, but I just didn't feel it. He would have never gotten on people like me in 2020 through 2022 for not masking. But I'm certain he and his family are triple jabbed, and he would have gone along as far as Newsom and company were trying to take it. He would not have rebelled until his job and income were shut down completely, and I'm not sure about that either. He then said, I feel like we are in some kind of a war. I really feel it. Then I told a worker in CVS to take off the mask. She made a bunch of excuses, none of which made sense, told her she was programmed, and left. Unquote. I love it. I just love it. You know, the thing that I find interesting with all of this too is that these kinds of people, the people that aren't wearing the mask now, are jabbed, as we know, are walking around and doing things that we were walking around and doing this entire time. And now they're acting as if what took place over the last 3 years didn't actually happen. It's right back into the matrix for them. They're completely oblivious to the fact that they were tricked to death. Their DNA is damaged. They went along with tyranny, which means they're not courageous, they're cowards. They're afraid. They'll do what government tells them no matter what. They'll do what a stranger tells them no matter what. And they will take a shit on any American that they have to, their own fellow Americans, just because government tells everybody to do something and there is a large percentage of us that refuse to go along. But they're just back to sleep now. It's like we're all just supposed to get along again. Everybody's just supposed to be friends again. I'm telling you. AJ's right. This is the dividing line. This is the dividing line in society. It's right here. It can't get any clearer. It really does beg the question, too, as to whether or not this is going to happen again. And when it does, and I think it will happen again, who's going to go along with it again? Are the same people who got duped last time going to mask up and jab up one more time? There will be that fraction of people that will do that. No doubt about it. I don't think it will be all of them. If you took, let's just make up the number 50%. It was way more than 50%, but let's say 50% wore the mask, 50% took the shots. What percentage of that 50% is likely to repeat the actions of the last 3 years all over again? I really don't know. Me personally, I don't know. I don't think it would be the full 50%. I think that would be impossible. I think that too many people recognize that they've been duped. A bunch of people would give that heavy sigh and go, "Oh, really? Again? They want us to do this again? Give me a break." And then they'd go, "I'm not doing it." But then other people would go, "Well, now wait a minute. They want us to do this again, so I mean, maybe it's serious this time. Give me a break." I mean, that right there is going to, again, just create another dividing line down the line in the future. And it'll be interesting to see what takes place. But yeah, I'll tell you, here's the observation that I've made, certainly recently, and it's a physical thing among the jabbed. And as we know, there are characteristics of these individuals where we can recognize whether or not they've been jabbed or not. It's pretty evident that if anybody is wearing a mask today, they're jabbed. I think that pretty much goes without saying. I mean, they might as well wear a sign around their neck that says, "I've had at least 3 shots. I'm radiating." But I was at Kroger's last week picking up a pineapple, and I'm walking around, and for some reason, I mean, it was like geriatric day at Kroger's, and I'm just looking at all these older men are there, and they're all just staring at me, and I don't know what it was. I felt like I was just again walking around in the Matrix, and I'm looking at all these people, and they're basically saying like, "Who's this foreigner? Who's this person who doesn't belong in our computer program?" It was very strange. But one of the other observations I made had to do with, again, the mask wearing, and how it seems that the vast majority of the mask wearing now, at least where I am, is existing among the elderly. That the elderly are the ones that are still clinging on to the mask. Now, is it all of them? No, of course not. But it certainly is I would say, a good chunk of them. And then there's this other physical thing that I've noticed, which has to do with individuals' posture. And the individuals who have been jabbed, who are maybe middle-aged to elderly, their posture is slumping, and they're sort of falling over a little bit, leaning over. Now, I know that that's common anyway. As people get old, they tend to just bend over. But at the exact same time, I'm watching individuals who didn't do that a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. And some of these people, again, were very active people, but now they just have sort of this malaise of a look on their face, and they're just bent over. So I don't know what that is. Prion disease, spike proteins, nanoparticle, self-assembling technology, all of that stuff. But it's clearly having an impact on the movement of people, and even sometimes, again, the looks in their faces. I mean, I encountered a very elderly, frail woman. She was short and speedy. I mean, I have to give her that advantage. She was fast. But she was wearing a mask, and she passed me, and our shopping carts kind of came nose to nose. And then I stopped and I let her through, and I was like, "You can go ahead." And she goes, "Okay, thanks." And her eyes were huge. Again, the mask wearing is the dead giveaway that they're jabbed, but even today. But the eyeballs, it's all in the eyes. You can see it in their eyes when they're wearing the mask. Now, it could be, again, that because the mouth and nose are covered, it emphasizes the look on the eyes. But her eyes were huge, and she just put that shopping cart into fifth gear, pedal to the floor, and she cooked it right past me like I was some kind of a disease. And I was in this larger store that, again, most of the people weren't wearing masks. The vast majority were not, but she was. Which, as you've heard me say numerous times, begs the question, what is it that she has figured out that apparently no one else has figured out? What is it that she enjoys about the mask wearing, or thinks that the mask is doing for her, that apparently it's not doing for any of us who are just walking around doing whatever it is that we're doing? So, see if you've seen that observation from a posture standpoint and a facial standpoint. Is there this malaise, or I don't want to say a catatonic look, but it's close to that on some of the people that have taken all of these jabs? They just look bland to me. And again, I could be searching for something subconsciously, but they just look bland. And again, it seems to just be around a lot of the middle-aged to elderly individuals. I've still seen, unfortunately, very young, socially awkward teenagers and people in their early 20s still wearing masks too, which begs the question: is the mask wearing a social control kind of thing? They think that they can control the mask. It makes them socially acceptable for some reason, or makes us more conscious of who they are and what's going on. I'm not sure, but it's pure brain damage. I know that. It's psychological trauma. We've all been traumatized during this entire time, but the psychological trauma has really kicked in for numerous people. Again, there's a lady down the street who will walk around and walk outside up and down the sidewalk, and she won't wear a mask, but she'll wear rubber gloves to go get her mail. This is a thing. I've watched this happen. And again, locks herself in her house, and she calls one of the town taxis to come and pick her up and take her to, the grocery store to pick up a few things. She has her groceries dropped off to her house. Somebody brings them into her house. It's just beyond bizarre. But this is, again, unfortunately, not a person who's going to make it. And yeah, that's still happening. Which again brings me back to the very beginning. What are people talking about and what are they not talking about? This is, I think, the largest issue taking place. It is the depopulation. It's the lack of abolishing these institutions. It's the people not talking about those two things. And then the people not bringing up the psychological trauma that has existed and continues to exist on a day in and day out basis. And where this is really going to lead all of us. I don't think the likes of Chris Ruffo and CON-INC have that answer, because they don't talk about that, do they? And that pretty much answers that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I will catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.